Because May is Bike Month, and because Bike Month is a big deal, we've split the month up into sections. Each week has a different theme, and week 1 of Bike Month is New Rider Week. And so because it's New Rider Week, I wanted to sort of start at the very beginning. A lot of what the Bike Coalition does, and I'm sure you know this, is advocating for people who already ride, making things better for people that ride. We don't put on a lot of classes about how to start riding for the first time. And there's a couple different reasons for that. One, it's very complicated. And two, it takes a lot of time. It has to do with the funding. A lot of times who we're reaching out to is adults that are already riding. So that's a great thing. But if you wanted to learn how to ride and also how to get your dogs to stop barking, then listen up. So I'm assuming most of you already know how to ride. I'm also assuming that most of you know someone who either doesn't ride very much anymore and may need to learn again at some point, or someone who's young who's going to be riding. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is how to physically get on the bike and ride for maybe, if not the first time, then one of the first times. So I've broken it up into 5 sections, and they are to set realistic goals, what's going on, ditch the pedals, need for speed, and starting and stopping. So part 1 is setting realistic goals. What I mean by that is, if you're learning how to ride a bicycle, then your goal for the day shouldn't necessarily be that I ride the bike at the end of the day. This is a multi-step process. There's a bunch of things that happen when you are riding the bike. And so breaking those up and focusing on each one individually and deciding at the end of the day, I want to be able to blank. And blank isn't always ride the bike all the way to work. There's steps that happen in between, and that's a good thing. It's okay to break it up. Number 2 is what's going on. And when I said there's a lot of things going on, I meant there's a lot of things going on. The pedals are moving, the wheels are moving, you're balancing, and that's just my top 3. They say it's as easy as riding a bike. I've heard that used before. And I think that applies very well when you're talking about getting back on a bicycle that you've already learned to ride. But riding for the first time is tough, right? And so it's like riding a bike means it's easy to pick up once you've already learned it. But if it's not something that you've learned previously, then it can be very tough. So focusing on each part of what it means to ride a bike is something that can help you. What I mean by that is ditch the pedals. This is far and away the most popular way now to teach people how to ride. It's absolutely not put training wheels on the bicycle. I'm going to turn my little light on here, give myself great lighting. There we go. Training wheels don't help you balance. Training wheels help you learn how to pedal, and that's great. Knowing how to pedal is great, but I think knowing how to balance is even better. Here's my example of a good way to learn. You know what? I think it's better if you just see it yourself. Let's start out with a way that isn't probably the best as far as learning how to ride a bike. Here's my example.
Mother and I are gonna... Oh my God, David, what are you doing?
I'm teaching him how to ride a bike.
Oh, please don't. You know I can't stand the sight of blood.
Seriously, son, you're gonna hurt yourself.
David, it is 1 foot on the pedal and 1 foot on the ground, and then get the hell out of here, okay?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, I'm gonna hold the bag.
He's coming. Come on. Okay. David, the pedals make it move more.
God, he's doing it.
You're doing it, son!
Oh my God.
Yay! Hey, someone get my camera.
Nobody get a camera.
David, over here.
Beautiful. I love it. It makes me so happy. It's an easy thing to joke about. It's an easy thing to make fun of. And also, it's a real reality. People are learning to ride bikes as adults all the time. The best way to do it is to do it. And that's a good example of that in that video, is just get on, see what you're comfortable with, and see how far you get. And then, after that, there are some more specific steps that you can take. Sylvie, you've recently taught adults how to ride bicycles. What's something that was surprising when you were doing that?
Well, it kind of looked just like that at times, which I think is so funny. Like, they begin to move and they just don't know which way the bike's going to go because they don't know how shifting body weight is going to help control the bike. So I love that clip. What I found was so helpful, one was that I had a folding bike. So it was something that was really small. The pedals just folded up and out of the way. And we found an awesome, like, quiet, safe, smooth place to begin. And then spent a lot of time just like finding places that she could kick and coast and pick up enough speed to get a sense of what balancing feels like. So we focused on balance. We moved on to using the brakes. And then eventually we unfolded the pedals. We picked up the seat a little bit and she got into pedaling. But having a bike that was so adaptable was awesome.
Yeah, I think that sort of brings me to the next item on the spreadsheet here, which is need for speed. And the thing I think that is sometimes easy to forget about using a bicycle, especially if you're not familiar with it and you haven't done it before, it feels safer to go slower. And so I want to go very slow so there's no danger of falling over. But it turns out that's the opposite of what you're going for. The faster you go, the easier it is to stay up. If we even have a turtle race, it's how slow can you go? And it's the most challenging, race that we put on because it's very, very hard to go slow. The slower you go, the more likely you are to fall over. So you were saying, yeah, I've taught people how to ride in parking lots that I know have a slight downward slant because a little bit of a roll is definitely something that's going to help you stay upright, especially when you take those pedals off, because the pedals are, as Alexis says in the clip, the pedals make it move more. And so if you don't have those, you need another way to move forward. So the kick bike is great for younger kids, and for adult bikes, you don't have to buy a kick bike. It's literally just take the pedals off and it works that way. And then finally, finally, starting and stopping. So I have found that with new riders, getting up and moving is the important part, and knowing how to stop is an important part for sure. But it's, knowing how to stop in an emergency situation is great, but the act of starting and stopping, you don't think about how much you do it, I think, when you are riding. But someone who's new to riding, that act of starting and stopping is one of the hardest parts, I think, once you've already gotten up and you've mastered the balance part. So finding a road that doesn't have a lot of stop signs on it is something that can be beneficial to people. When you do want to learn how to stop appropriately, when you do want to learn to stop in a way that is not going to be uncomfortable, that's going to involve putting the pedals on, and that's going to involve putting the seat up a little higher. But all those things are skills that come after the most basic stuff. So as cliche as it is, standing behind someone, keeping them balanced, helping them to move forward and stopping them from falling over, those are great skills. Every movie about a kid growing up has, their mom running behind him with a bicycle, and that's great. Have you seen, Kevin, those like poles you can attach to a bike, especially with little kids?
Oh,
totally.
I want those. Adults need those too.
That makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, it's a long stick with a little handle on the end, and you attach the stick to the back of the bicycle, and then you can hold the bike up, right?
Yeah, the issue with doing it with adults is that you end up like too in somebody's space. Like you end up having to kind of like hold below the saddle, and like maybe like you have to like hold on to the bike to just give them that confidence that it's not going to fall. And I just want an adult size stick to go on my folding bike.
Yeah, it's funny how popular the balance bike has gotten, and I feel like people are definitely moving away from the training wheels. And again, I don't want to say that training wheels are inherently a bad thing, especially when they're raised up high enough so that you're still balancing on your own. And learning how to pedal is an important skill, but I think balancing is even more important. That's why those pedal bikes for kids have gotten, and it's just so fun because the kid gets going on it and it doesn't take much. And some of this stuff comes naturally, but I don't want to lean on that too hard, because if it doesn't come naturally, that doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means, keep at it. But it's all physics, really. I remember my dad used to, you take a bike wheel that's not attached to anything else, hold on to the axle when it's in front of you, and you spin it, and that centrifugal force, you can really feel it in your hand. There's even children's toys that do that same thing. The bike wants to stay upright when it's moving, when the pedals are going, when the chain's going, when the wheel's going. That physical act of moving the wheel forward is what keeps the wheel up. It's centrifugal force. And so if you're moving forward, if the bike's moving forward, it's less about, I mean, in a way, you're stopping yourself from falling constantly, and that's okay. Because eventually it becomes second nature and it gets a little bit easier. So you too can be like David Rose and learn to ride a bike as an adult. It's a real thing that happens. So we have videos on our YouTube that are about learning to ride better once you've already learned to ride. I think that it would make sense for us to put some more up about learning to ride a bike for the first time. And I'd love to put on some classes like that. It's just a matter of getting enough people together in one place, I think, and getting them all on the same page. But yeah, I think we could make it happen.
You know, something else that came up when I was teaching this woman, and I believe she was like 26. We had a couple days when a mechanical issue happened, and we just like fixed it. And the class that day wasn't about going out and pedaling and getting all the bike skills down, but it was like, how do you fix a flat? How do you take the wheels off? And because it was a folding bike too, you know, we had to make one lesson, like, how do you fold this silly thing up and make it half as small so you can move it? But confidence is such a huge piece of getting on a bike. And initially, you know, she was like kicking and coasting alongside little kids. They might be like 2, and they would be just coasting away, like both feet up, and made it look so easy. And so that's the kind of thing that I think takes people's confidence down a whole lot. But when she got into all the maintenance and mechanics side of it and could make sense of how the bike functions and why it balances and why it stops and how the wheels come off and how you know it's safe, that was a big like leveling up. And so at that point, even when she was getting passed by little kids, she was like, well, I can fix a flat. So I got that down.
I think that's important to remember when you're teaching someone to ride. If you were taking that on, one of the criteria is a place to do it, which is relatively private. Because absolutely you can feel self-conscious if you're in, you know, the middle of a super crowded area, you know, downtown or in Balboa Park or something like that. You know, then having people around and watching you is something that can, you know, feel weird. Where do you bring people? I know for sure it's not always going to work, but especially during COVID, the zoo parking lot, half of it was completely empty. And that was a very cool place if you wanted a private space that had a little bit of a downhill that did head towards the street. So be careful there. But yeah, big flat blacktop, a little bit of a downhill, and hardly any foot traffic at all in the corners. Any if you were what specifically, where would you bring someone if you wanted to teach them to ride a bike?
Yeah, so in San Diego, I was going to Balboa a lot because I found that we could bike on the footpaths and the sidewalks and things safely. And then as we kind of leveled up, all the like, you know, easily accessible like neighborhoods felt pretty safe to bike in too. Mm-hmm. But this one, actually, okay, this was the spot. So we would do this loop by the velodrome, and you know, initially we passed it, nobody was using it, and I explained what it was, and she was like, oh, that's cool, like I'd like to get into fast biking one day. We went back the next week, it was open, and we got to sit and just watch people like, you know, speeding up the sides, and she was like, oh, that's the kind of biking I want to do. And that's become such a motivational piece of it too, being in a place that we can see people on bikes, and she can begin to think about what kind of, you know, what style she's into and what skills she hopes to gain. So I love that. I love being in a place that's like a little bit public so that you can kind of see what cycling looks like beyond the kicking and coasting stage of it.
Absolutely. And then once you are up and rolling a little bit, this is a great time to promote, you know, separated bicycling facilities, bike paths, San Diego River Trail. You know, there's no cars at all there. And then even in Normal Heights, my specific street that I like to bring people on, the Mountain View. I mean, these streets that go along the canyon, there's hardly any stop signs, and it's just sort of a smooth, easy, slow, low traffic, low volume road. no stop lights. And so if you want to just roll, that's the most fun part. That's why you learned to ride a bike, is because you want to be able to just roll, not because you want to learn how to start and stop. So giving yourself the freedom and finding a space where you can do that and actually get some speed up is beneficial. A lot of fun. That's why at the end of bike rodeos, we always do a sort of follow the leader thing, where one person, an adult, an experienced rider, just rides their bike and everyone else just follows behind, because it's fun to just go. That's the best part of it, I think.
I just keep thinking of new things. Like, this makes me think about what it was like when I was like 7, 8 and finding out how to bike. And I taught myself by like biking along this like wall of hay. So I knew that at least if I fell to the left, I was like falling into something soft. But having a good space that you know you can fall and it's not going to have like a high consequence is also so nice.
Yeah.
And something else I just thought of is that a lot of new cyclists just kind of accept that biking is uncomfy and get used to that. And, you know, they'll bike a couple miles and be like, okay, well, that's fun. But, you know, the saddle sucks and it's the one that came with the bike. So I guess that's just how it's going to be. And I'm just going to accept that, like, I can only bike a few miles at a time. Or they'll have the seat too low, and they'll continue to keep the seat too low. They'll use way too much quad muscle, and they'll just be, like, aching and aching and aching. And realizing that all those adjustments can be made to make biking actually feel good, I think is a huge, like, leveling up piece of being a new cyclist and then getting into it and actually biking a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's true of any hobby, but, you know, there's the entry level price of buying the bicycle and those, you know, or if you're a painter, buying the brushes and the paints and stuff. But if the thing that's preventing you from going to that next level, the thing that's preventing you from riding more often is that the bike is uncomfortable, well, there's ways that you can get more comfortable. There's ways that it can get better when riding the bike. And so that might not mean buying a whole new bike, but the cool thing about it is that it's modular. So you'll swap out this part or that part or whatever else. Biking isn't an inherently uncomfortable activity. And if it's uncomfortable, then there's something wrong and you can change that. Yeah. Mark, yes, my camera is reversed. It's true. I was trying to hide it, but then I realized there's just too many words around me. So, sorry.
You know, seeing that
but
comment.
my text is readable. See, look at that. How to get rolling. Pretty cool.
I just saw that comment come up about the Bike Month Challenge, and it made me want to mention the Bike Month Challenge, which is, it's May, it's Bike Month. Oh my God. We have a bike fitting class happening at the end of the month. I believe it's on May 28th. So if anybody is in that level of like new cyclist, wants to level up, but my bum aches each time I go biking, that's an awesome class. And Kevin, you may have done a little shout out to Nelson Vales, who we know and love, and he's a San Diegan. He's going to be helping teach the class. So no joke that we hang out with Nelson Vales just a little bit. So that's a cool thing to tune into if you want bike fitting knowledge and to say that you've been in a class taught by an Olympian.